Welcome, sentient beings from all known universes and beyond. It's time to activate your cranial downlinks and prepare to receive a raft of discussion on a cosmic ocean of science fiction and fantasy topics, interviews with local area genre devotees, and insightful prognostication by our soothsayers of science fiction, our forecasters of fantasy, and any other beings that happen to get caught in our gravity well. This is the Galactic Driftwood Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Galactic Driftwood Podcast. Was that Bird whistling the Galactic Driftwood theme song?
That's exactly when she started.
Excellent timing from Bird.
We're
Galactic Driftwood, and this is Bird.
That's Bird, Murder Bird.
Bird, Murder Bird.
Don't call her Murder Bird. So,
she likes it.
hey, I'm Linda.
Yeah. I'm Bill.
I'm Charles.
I'm Seth.
I'm Stu.
Welcome to the show today, and we're going to kick this off with a discussion of the recent controversy, which, Seth, I'm going to let you just jump in and tell folks what that is and what it isn't.
Well, I mean, I could do the whole rundown, but let's drag it out a little bit because there's less here than
Meets
for a
the eye.
scandal than there should be for a proper scandal. Most of why I want to talk about it is because of the quote-unquote nerd rage and the machine that kind of springs up around any of these issues as they gain steam. Rewinding back to earlier in the year, some of you may remember the OGL problem with Dungeons and Dragons, where you said something, Linda, but we can't hear you.
I just said, problem. That's what I'd call it.
Yeah, so basically, hello, Artemis. Wizards of the Coast wanted to rewrite their open gaming license that allowed third-party presses to publish content for D&D 5th edition. They wanted to remake that to be far more restrictive and basically give them far more power and far more money from the content that other people made. The whole community exploded, and they ended up having to walk back the whole OGL thing. And they had to walk all that back and end up putting the system rule set for D&D 5 into Creative Commons, as opposed to an OGL, which gave them less control. But the damage, to a large extent, was already done. Several of the major third-party publishers of content kind of saw the writing on the wall, and as a result,
decided to go off on their own.
Yeah, decided that if D&D is not going to be is going to try and claim a large portion of our revenue, we might as well just make our own RPGs and have all of our revenue and not just cut Wizards of the Coast out of the equation
entirely. Yeah.
And so we saw several big third-party publishers: Cobalt Games, Ghostfire Press, several others announced RPGs that they were coming out with on their own.
Well, and wasn't there also a huge backlash from the the fans in that there was all these cancellations of their D&D Beyond subscriptions?
Yeah, I was kind of glossing over that a little bit.
Yeah.
So, like, the fan reaction was extreme, and it should be, because there was a clause in that new OGL that basically said, "Hey, we can use your material, whatever you make, whenever we want, in whatever we want. We don't have to ask for your permission, and we don't have to give you any money." And the fan response was to immediately start dumping subscriptions to D&D Beyond.
It was like a giant FU.
Yeah. And Blizzard's, there were so many cancellations at one point that it crashed their actual system.
So, Mr. Swanson, just to clarify, so what you're talking, am I understanding correctly? Because I've only played one campaign in D&D Beyond. Yes, I realize I'm a Philistine. I'm the noob. I mean, I played my first game, Dungeons and Dragons, in 1981, but I've been extremely light participant ever since. So, Mr. Swanson, am I to understand then that on D&D Beyond you have all this homebrew content that D&D Beyond was legendary for, right? And so
the homebrew content on D&D Beyond is different than these third-party presses. These are like magic items and races that people have come up with on their own.
Okay, so you're talking about more published material. So you're saying, say, if I, Stu Burns, using the old under the old OGL, say I created my own campaign, adventure in Evoca.
Mm-hmm.
And I created this magic item, this coin of this Bitcoin of summoning, for example.
Okay.
And it was in published material under the old OGL, Wizards of the Coast can say, you don't have any right to the Bitcoin of summoning. We can take it. We can do anything we want to with it. Is that what you're
no, so it's more.
That's not how it works. Okay.
The old OGL was more basically the rules of D&D 5e, the base classes with the base subclasses. The original OGL was basically, here's some of our content that you can use to make your campaigns and then sell your campaigns.
Right.
Or you can make supplements that add on to these rules.
Right.
You can sell those. You can do whatever you want with them. Wizards still had to basically contract with you to do something with that. So if your campaign turned out to be super popular and Wizards of the Coast wanted to basically use some of that content, they would still have to talk to you because that's your content, not theirs.
Okay.
So what you couldn't do is use specific terms from it or specific monsters. So you had the coin of whatever, but you can't use a specific a famous magic item from D&D in your system. Basically, they had protected things that were specifically D&D, usually in one of the settings that they publish, like the Forgotten Realms.
Right.
So you can't have Elminster from the Forgotten Realms in your campaign. That was basically how it was in the old OGL.
Then the revised OG changed all that, and now all of a sudden,
the revised OGL was basically, you can't use Elminster in your campaign, and we get to use your coin of reappearance.
Bitcoin of summoning.
Yeah, we get to use the Bitcoin of summoning, and we don't have to ask you or pay you. That's ours now.
That was going to be the revised OGL. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That was part of that issue. Okay.
Yeah, and also, if you make X amount of money, we get X amount of your money.
that's the part that got the most attention. That once you're over, I think it was $50,000, then we become essentially Don Fanucci from the Godfather. We get a cut of that.
Yeah, and there was a lot of speculation that this was basically written to get Critical Role's content.
Okay.
Because Critical Role is real popular and making a lot of money.
Yes, they have.
They're getting deals with Amazon for shows, and there was a lot of speculation that this was a move against Matt Mercer and his company Darrington Press, which creates content and games. So fast forward a little bit, the new OGL is dead, but Wizards of the Coast has lost all this trust from people, and a lot of the community has lost a lot of trust as well. But Critical Role announces that they have 2 RPG systems coming out. One is Daggerheart, which is we don't know a lot about yet, but it's supposed to be for longer play campaigns, like multi-year campaigns, that sort of thing. Whereas their other system, Candela Obscura, is designed for shorter campaigns. So we learned about these 2 things, and there was quite a bit of hype because it's Critical Role, and they've put out a couple games through Darrington Press. There was a Tal'Darai Reborn, I think, or no? Oh gosh, what is that? I'll look at the book later.
Rebirth or something, I think.
Yeah. But it was basically the Exandria rule set for D&D 5e. They put out their own third-party content for 5e, which was pretty well received. You can find it in most stores. But Candela Obscura was coming first, and so they released basically a teaser for the rules, and started streaming their first game of it, and that's when the new trouble started, because people started noticing pretty much immediately that Candela Obscura had a very, 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 really, really, really similar rule set to another system called Blades in the Dark. Both of these are D6 systems that are based around having a dice pool of D6 dice and tying those to skills and actions you can perform in the game. So I don't go into a whole rule breakdown. Basically, it was more or less identical, leading lots of people to start pointing fingers and getting the rage train going on Darrington Press for copying somebody else's rule set. And it turns out that there never should have been any, this isn't a scandal, this isn't a thing. The guy Blades in the Dark is a third-party RPG system, but as with many third-party RPG systems, it was published under a very permissive license. The intent of it was always to have other game designers take it, use the rules, reiterate them, and make something better out of it. In a way, the community kind of supports itself in that way of self-iterating through these systems. Blades in the Dark was itself also based on another system called Powered by the Apocalypse. So coming after Darrington Press for iterating on something that was an iteration itself is already, like, why are you mad about that? Further compounding it is that the design team gives Blades in the Dark and the creator full credit in the book for the parts that they were taken from. They also borrowed from another RPG. Kind of mixed or mashed two of them together to make something a little bit new, a little bit different. But the original creator was thanked, and he fully knew. They were talking about it on Twitter, and the creator of Blades in the Dark responded positively. Basically, a big old heart emoji. Thanks, guys.
So it's pretty much a non-controversy that was blown up by people that seem to have more time on their hands than to talk about controversies and to investigate what's really happening.
Yeah, and I mean, it just seems like there's a new one of these every week where something small happens and it blows up on Twitter for a week. People harass other people on Twitter for a week, and it was never an issue to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, most of this is I have a lot of the problem around, like, when the conservative rage machine gets going, like on how Ariel in the new Little Mermaid movie was played by a black girl, and who the fuck cares? Like, I didn't actually see it. I've heard her sing, and she did marvelously there, but who cares? These people. And I'm tired of it. Was this episode just me ranting about me being angry at angry men?
Well, so far.
We can go on with this. We can go on because we're talking about in the humanities that I've studied, we call this intertextuality, this idea that each text is dependent upon the other. They inspire each other, and they gain meaning by their reference to each other. Because if you've played D&D, then you're going to be able to segue into Pathfinder very easily, because Pathfinder is based on D&D.
Right.
And then, so on with the systems that you're talking about, Seth. And it seems to me really that the gaming community as such is very open to intertextuality. And you can argue, to this type of borrowing, to this system of mutual inspiration. And you can... you say this is very good for creation, and you can extend to other things. Because in our last podcast, we were talking about how you take what is now a public domain work like Dracula, and you just take one sliver of it, take one chapter, and that's its whole other movie. And how many times? I mean, I'm drawing a blank. Yeah, okay, yeah. The Punisher. The Punisher was a throwaway villain in one issue of Spider-Man. He was a stooge of a guy nobody remembers anymore called the Jackal.
Mm-hmm.
I remember.
And now he's his own. Yeah, he is his own franchise, for God's sake. You just keep building on this stuff, and it doesn't. And the way that our world works now, with how linked we are with the internet, with communication, it makes sense to make this stuff open. Don't try to hold on to it. Don't try to invoke the law on this thing. You'll get yours eventually. It'll come around. If their stuff is popular and it's based on your stuff, guess what? Then you can come back and make stuff that piggybacks on their stuff.
Yeah.
Disney has done us a real disservice, like messing with the laws that govern when things go into the public domain.
Yes.
And they've done this, of course, to retain control of characters like Mickey, Donald, and whatnot. But it has an effect that other things that should be in the public domain long ago are not going into the public domain, probably ever. Like Superman and Batman should both be public domain by now. Like Marvel should just be able to bring Batman into Spider-Man if they wanted.
Well, Mickey becomes public domain next year. Unless there is some Hail Mary in Congress in the next 4 months, Mickey goes into public domain next year because Steamboat Willie came out in 1928. Superman then would go into the public domain, not for a little while yet. That'll be 12 years. But I know the estate of Arthur Conan Doyle for a long time was fighting was fighting the character of Sherlock Holmes from going into the public domain, because the first stories have been in the public domain for a long time, but they were saying, well, you don't get to use free use of the character until all the stories are in the public domain. Okay? And often Leslie Klinger just went ape crap on that, and really fought that tooth and nail, and got his way, saying, no, Holmes is in the public domain. I can use him. He belongs to all of us now. He's part of the canon. Yeah. So that'll be interesting, because it'll hopefully be in all our lifetimes. It's Superman under current law, does become public domain. And then what are you going to do?
Yeah, and he just Sherlock Holmes just entered public domain in January of this year.
Well, you can he had to have been, because Mark Twain did a Sherlock Holmes.
He did.
It's a parody, but yeah.
What, like, wasn't it Enola Holmes or something like that? Or Mark Twain did a story something about it. Sherlock Holmes, smarter, funnier.
Well, yeah, if I remember right, he's sort of a goofball. No one's really, but I know someplace out there's a Mark Twain version.
Now that's interesting, because parody has always been covered under fair use.
And that might be what.
Because like Weird Al Yankovic, for example, he famously always asks permission, but legally he doesn't really have to. He does mostly out of courtesy and to maintain goodwill with the artist, because he doesn't want to have a bad name. But as a rule, you can parody another's work ad infinitum. That you're able to do.
That's fair use.
Yeah,
it was called the Double Barrel Detective Story.
Yep,
by Mark Twain. Yeah.
In which Sherlock Holmes finds himself in the American West.
Yeah. So, Stu, what I found on that was, it says in January of 2023, the world's greatest detective, Sherlock Holmes, fully entered the public domain thanks to the expiration of the copyright on the Casebook of Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, the very last published work.
Yeah. It says this means it can be written about and presented in any way an author sees fit. It says, while Holmes has been partially in the public domain for a long time, the copyright expiration means considerably more freedom in adaptations.
Right.
Yeah, so, I think the Holmes estate, or not the Holmes estate, but the estate of
Arthur Conan
Doyle. I had heard somewhere that there were only certain ways that they would allow you to portray Holmes. Like,
well, that's what they would say. But Klinger, is one of these people who, he fought him back and forth, and he usually won, because once the character is out there, precedent is you can use it. The Holmes, now you got me saying it. The Doyle estate, it had been contending that no, you can't do that. That we keep a shorter leash on there on that. And Klinger, for the most part, has gotten his way, but most other authors, or most of the publishers, more likely, have said, okay, we'll bake off on that, and until this year, because now it's full public domain.
So when's it in public domain this year?
January of this year, yeah.
That's well. How do you?
And I know that Star Trek Next Generation did an episode, Elementary, My Dear Data, where Data played the character of Sherlock Holmes in a holodeck simulation, and they did a couple of those before they finally got in trouble with the estate of Arthur Conan Doyle, because they hadn't asked permission to be able to do that, or secured the rights to be able to do that. So once they found out that had happened, Paramount got a nasty gram from.
Well, how's that work with something like Dr. House? Because that was a ripoff in its own way, also.
That is so broadly derived.
Once you realize what's happened, though, you go, well.
Yeah, but at no point do they say this is Sherlock Holmes. Right. Like, they don't use any of the protective terms around it. So there's legal wiggle room where, like, this is definitely not the character in a different situation. Wink, wink, wink.
No, it was a combination of all three characters, but it was right. It was Holmes. It was Doctor from Dr. Watson, and who's the detective? Oh, that's funny. I got a mind blank on that.
Lestrade.
Oh, how'd that fit in? I'd have to remember. It's been a while. Doctor. It was his first name. House's first name. I think that matched up.
Gregory.
That was it. Anyway.
Well, to kind of bring it back to RPGs, that's kind of what Wizards of the Coast ended up doing, was putting the whole Dungeons and Dragons rule set in the public domain through the Creative Commons license. And that's basically giving it to the public and what they had to do. But we're actually seeing that with a lot of other gaming systems now that are making their rule sets open to be used, so that we don't have OGL issues going forward in the future. Pathfinder, I believe, has put their rule set into Creative Commons, or actually, I think they ended up having they were working with a legal team or something to make a license that would be the equivalent of a forever OGL. Like, we still have we still basically retain control over our story elements, but you can use all of our gameplay elements.
Yeah.
What's
interesting is if you look at copyright law, one of my favorite YouTubers is Legal Eagle, and they took a good look at this, and they what they came out with is that legally, one sticking point here is that you cannot copyright a procedure.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can't really copyright a recipe, for example. And that has been held to extended to game rules. If the NFL wanted to try to copyright the game of football and say, okay, you want to play football, you have to pay us a licensing fee. They could be told to go jump the lake because you can't copyright a procedure. You can't copyright gaming rules.
They could copyright the term football, maybe. So you couldn't call your new game football.
They might be able to. Well, yeah, that's a whole other issue. I know that they've copyrighted the term Super Bowl, for example. You listen to ads and so forth. They don't call it the Super Bowl anymore. They call it the big game because they can only use the term Super Bowl in official NFL stuff, which is silly. So legally, there really wasn't a leg to stand on in the first place in terms of use of the game. You can copyright texts. I can't take the NFL rule book and make my own copies of it and sell it myself. And just like D&D, rule books, you can't just make copies of those and sell them yourself, or significant portions out of there. But in terms of actually just using the rules and referring to other books, that's not something you can copyright in the first place. So if this thing had really gone to court, if somebody really said, you know what, we've got backing, we've got people who can put up $2 million to fight this thing in court, that could have got interesting. That could have broken open the whole kit and caboodle.
Interesting.
And of course, this OGL issue isn't the only thing that Wizards has come under fire for this year. If we're just going to talk about, if we want to just talk about stuff around D&D and nerd scandals,
right?
Like
because there was a whole thing on AI art being used in one of their most recent books.
Bigsby's Glory of Giants, I believe. Fans have identified AI art in being used in the book, and Wizards has responded saying that, we were contracting with this artist and we didn't know he was using AI art. We will now make sure that no one uses AI art. And so the community's trying to decide how much salt we take with that statement.
Right.
But But
well, and they've also come under fire for supposedly working with a company that's trying to create the AI version of Dungeon Masters for online gaming, so that you can go in and just join a campaign, and an artificial intelligence will run the whole game for you. So, they said for the longest time, we are not working on replacing Dungeon Masters with artificial intelligence. Well, no, they aren't, but they hired a company that is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
One of the much earlier in the year was Magic's 30th anniversary, or maybe this was last year. But for Magic's 30th anniversary, they reprinted a bunch of the beta cards, and they put them into like the blind packs that you usually get them. And they were, for Magic's 30th anniversary, the big thing that they were doing for the community was this. And you could get 3 packs of these classic cards for $1,000. Yeah, Linda has the correct response right there.
Right.
And not only were these cards $1,000, but they were proxies. You couldn't play with them.
Linda, I think you're muted.
And now, like,
really have nothing to say.
yeah, I think Linda is giving that idea the bird right now.
Yeah.
Like that blew up in their face really bad too, and that was just like minutes after the OGL scandal had like died down, and now earlier this month or last month, I think, it's D&D's big anniversary, and same language. We're so excited. We want to do something really cool for the community, so we are reprinting the first edition, the first 3-book run of Dungeons and Dragons, like the first edition, these classic books that very few people have ever seen, let alone held.
Yeah.
And it was going to come with a bunch of some adventures and some cool bonus material, all printed like it was in the 70s. And I'm getting a little hyped because I'd buy this. I'm interested in this. I'd have it. I'd get it just to, have it and be able to look and read through some of that history. And then they're like $1,000.
$1,000
again. $1,000 for this thing they're doing for the community.
That's horse shit.
Yeah.
It's for the community of investors in D&D is what it's for.
Yeah,
And we know this because we've heard, we have reports from inside the community that the CEO at Hasbro and the board says that D&D and Magic the Gathering has been under-monetized, which means the community has more money that they want. And what this has resulted in is we see far more releases in D&D than we used to. It used to be like maybe 1 or 2 books a year, and the content would usually be pretty high quality. You'd get new subclasses, new feats, new spells, new magic items that go along with the new setting. With the faster paced releases, we're seeing decreased quality, less content that you can play with, and bigger prices, because not only do the books release more regularly now, but they also cost more and contain less. Likewise, in Magic the Gathering, we used to only have 4 releases a year. Now we're at more than 12. Like, there's a new set that's released almost every month, and that's not including the special secret, the secret lair releases. So they are, like, we see Wizards of the Coast milking its customer base, basically.
Like, and that's kind of the whole point of the one D&D stuff they're coming out with, right, is to bring players into the D&D digital world and to continue to monetize their products and, get them to purchase digital content to keep the revenue stream coming in and maintain those monthly digital subscriptions.
Yeah, I mean, they see stuff like World of Warcraft, and they want to be that. They've wanted to be World of Warcraft since.
Well, that's because. Well, I'm just thinking back when I was a kid and playing D&D, that would have been the poor kids thing to do for the weekend.
Yeah,
that's what we did. I was in a neighborhood without a lot of money, and one of the kids got a hold of the Dungeons.
Yeah, one book can be months and months and months years of entertainment.
And to compete with the video games is absurd because right now the kids I take care of, it's hard to get. They're not interested in D&D. The video games are quite a pull.
Yeah,
well, that's kind of what I think they're trying to get some of that market and make it more video game like. If they could get Fortnite money in D&D, that's what they want, and they're
looking for the money. But I'm saying the problems. That's not.
Yeah.
Why would I, as the parent even of kids? Let's say, I'm not going to spend equal money on D&D if I'm going to have to buy. I'm more likely to spend money on D&D if it's the poor kids thing to do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but. Their goal is to get subscriptions and microtransactions. They want the microtransactions. That's what they're after. They want you to pay $10 for a new subclass, $5 for a specific magic item, $3 for a skin for your character in the virtual tabletop. In addition to your $15 a month subscription to play D&D.
Nickel and dime.
Yeah. Which leads us back into secondary or third-party systems.
Right. Well,
so, maybe D&D won't be the hobby of poor kids, but Daggerheart or Pathfinder definitely still can be.
Mm-hmm. Well, and what you're doing is you're driving this stuff into the gray market too, because I'm gonna tell a secret now that a lot of my friends, people who are low income families, they play D&D and they play it off of these bootleg PDFs.
Yeah,
mm-hmm. One guy buys the book, somebody scans it, and it's everywhere. And that's if the book costs $20, people will buy it. If the book costs $50, people will grab the bootleg.
Right.
Yeah. And I mean, they should make a cheap PDF option available. Mm-hmm. I don't know why they haven't. Freaking Paizo has. You can get all of Paizo's books purely in PDF for a very reasonable price. And the same is true for all the rest of these third-party publishers. It's not a hard thing to do. They just choose not to.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, so there you have it.
That was a solid 40 minutes of me doing a nerd rant.
Well, sometimes you got to get that stuff off your chest to be able to move on.
Yeah. And
did anybody else want to talk today?
Well, it's good for me because I'm trying right now to do a little public domain publishing. And I'll let you guys know about that one as soon as it's off the ground. It's getting really close now. The first book coming out, and hopefully I'll have the second book out by Halloween. So we'll
nice.
Hopefully.
All right. Cool. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in and listening to this episode. We hope you enjoyed Seth's rant.
That's what I'll call the episode. Seth's rant.
Seth's rant.
Right. If you have any comments or thoughts or suggestions or criticisms, smartass remarks, etc., please post them down below in the comments section, and we will catch you on the next episode. So till then, take care and have a good week. See y'all. Oh, I guess I wasn't ready to say goodbye yet. Hold on. I'll be ready momentarily.
Dun, dun,
Now I'm ready.
Go, bird.
Sing it. All right. See y'all. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Galactic Driftwood podcast. For more information and past episodes, please visit our website at galacticdriftwood.space or subscribe to us on YouTube. And now, please deactivate your cranial downlinks, collect your towels, and be sure to watch your step as you exit our gravity well.